Okay, got it.
All right, we're up. Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Craft Podcast, where Michael and I interview experts in a bunch of different fields to learn about their disciplines and how they strive towards mastery. We love talking to people who are passionate enough to master something. And we've each been asking curious questions of these craft people our whole lives. And we want to share those conversations with others. So let's get right into it. Today, we're joined by Umar Jamil, who
Hi.
is a software developer, AI engineer, entrepreneur, and a burgeoning YouTube creator. He grew up in a bustling Pakistani household in Italy, and he's now based in Suzhou in China. And Umar has a uniquely multicultural background. He's fluent in Italian, English, Urdu, and he's currently learning Mandarin. But how we connected uh, initially is with his through his background in software development, open source, and content creation experience. Umar has become one of the top machine learning educators on YouTube. He's one of the few people who have had the guts to try and break down some of the famous AI models like Llama and Stable Diffusion, and in detailed videos teach people how to build them from scratch. So with Umar's broad range of interests and experiences, he's a great example of a modern master, and we're excited to have you on the craft, Umar.
Thank you for the opportunity, Daniel and Michael.
Yeah. Well, I just mentioned kind of a bunch of things that you're doing and working on now, but let's go all the way back to the origin story of Umar as a technical person. So apparently, when you were like 14 years old, you became one of the youngest certified Microsoft developers in Italy.
Italy,
And
yeah.
yeah, I said you corrected me. I said the world originally, and you were like, no, it's only Italy. But 14 years old is definitely youngest among the youngest in the world for sure. So how did that happen? How did you come to that?
All right, all right. Yeah. Actually, that's an interesting story by itself, and it's full of coincidences. So apparently, the youngest person who was certified by Microsoft as a software engineer in that period, so when I was growing up, is a Pakistani girl. So coincidentally, she's a Pakistani girl,
Huh.
and her name is Arfa Karim. Unfortunately, she died very young. She had some heart condition, but when she got certified, she went directly to meet Bill Gates in the Seattle headquarters because she was very talented at that time. And
Yeah.
let's go a few years back. So everything started when my father won a lottery. So everything starts with a lottery. My father won a lottery in Italy for 3,000 euros. And I was like 9 years old or 10 years old. And we didn't have my family was quite financially in difficult times. My father was an immigrant. He had a job, but we were really doing not well. We were five people in a room of 25 square meter. And it's really hard time growing up there. So my father really push on the education side. So he's decided to spend all his money on to buy us a computer. So we bought the top-notch computer that we could afford that time with the money from the
With the
lottery.
lottery money.
Yeah, yeah. So my father spent like 2,000 euro out of the 3,000 euro to buy the top computer we could find in the market.
Oh
And
man.
that was my first time getting a computer. And then we told my father that there is internet, this thing called internet where you can do research online and study online. And he said, don't worry, we do it internet. So we got the internet. One day, my brother brings home, he's in high school and I was in elementary school. He brings home a book about Visual Basic. Visual Basic was a programming language used in the 90s for making a
Right.
rapid application development. And my brother was doing it in high school. They teach a little bit of programming. What? Anyway, I got this book in my hand, and I was like, I said, how I can make software with this stuff. So how can I also participate in this? So I started reading the book, I started cracking everything. And it took me a long time to even learn the basics, because if you have a teacher, like if your parents are already software engineers, or if your brother is a software engineer, or someone is a software engineer, they can teach you. But for me to just understand what is a variable, considering I was in elementary school without having
Right.
all the resources we have now. Like now you want to study programming, you go to YouTube, there is a lot of stuff, right? But that time there is nothing. Also, I only speak Italian that time. I mean, my English is not so good, so the resources in Italian are very, very, very little. So I remember the first applications I started building were very basic calculators, like just a software to do calculations, like you press the number 1 plus number 2 and it will output number 3. I did this for months. How to say? Because I couldn't understand all the advanced topics, but I didn't give up. So I read all the book, even if I couldn't understand most of it, but I applied all the things that were written in the book. So take the button, put it here, then write this code, then press execute, and it will pop up. So that was my first interaction with programming. And that's how I got started. So it was a really difficult time because I couldn't find anything, but it was at the same time very I knew I was passionate about it because I didn't give up. I didn't give up for months, even if I couldn't understand the words. So, and then, after you build up the basic knowledge, then you grow it, and then it becomes, then you master that field after a while. And yeah. And after reading the stories of other software engineers, that's how I came to know Arfa Karim, and that's how I came to know also about Microsoft certifications. So I said, wow, she's a Pakistani girl. She's young. She's younger than me. She can do it. Who am I not to be able to do it then? I mean, I have more, I also, how to say, studied hard. And I'm also have a computer. So, I mean, I don't lack anything, right? So I started buying books about Microsoft certifications, and then that's how I started in this career path.
Wow, incredible. Did they fly you out to meet Bill Gates?
Yeah, hopefully one day, but not yet.
Hopefully one day. It can still happen.
No, it was really a nice story. I mean, for Pakistani community, it was a really nice story, especially because she's a Pakistani woman. And that time, Pakistani women were much more limited than they are now. So it was really, yeah.
Incredible. So you brought up kind of some interesting tidbits. I mean, immigrant family, your dad, I mean, played the lottery and then won, and then instead of spending it or like adding it to a savings account and spending in like a small way, but also instead of buying something fancy for himself, he bought this expensive piece of technology for the family to use. So he must be a really interesting person. Like how did family kind of shape your values? Also growing up with a lot of siblings that I guess at least one was older than you.
Yeah, my brother was older than me and my sister is younger. So yes, my father shaped my values a lot, and especially my father and my mother, both of them. They, first of all, they always put education first. So for families like especially Pakistani families, but I would say also mostly Asian families, they put always education first above everything else. This means that we don't sacrifice on education. We can sacrifice on food if we need. Yeah. Yeah, so but my father also, when he was a young student, he was very hardworking. So my father was from even poorer family, and he used to work also in the family farm. So in the morning, he used to wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to help with the family farm. Then he went to school, come back. Then he cycled for 1 hour to go to a job site, come back cycling. Then at night, he used to study. And nonetheless, even he was in a public school in Pakistan, in one of the small cities in Pakistan, so not a big city. There was the matriculation exam, so like the high school entry exam, I think he got the highest marks of the province, and the teachers came to congratulate with his mother at home. So all the teachers from school, yeah, it's a great man.
And it reminds me of like people who in in China, like they get the best score for their province in the Gaokao, like the Chinese college
Yeah,
entrance exam. It's like a big honor for the whole for everyone who knows that person, their family, their teachers, their
yeah.
friends.
Well, because in competitive societies like this one, it is the result of hard work. You cannot teach your way to the top score. You must
Mm.
be able to, yeah, you must have studied hard. And it means this person really put a lot of effort. And my father really was the person that inspired me, I mean, all through my life. Mm, every time I think of giving up, I always think of him.
How he never gives up.
Yeah. Also, my father, when how he came to Italy, for example. So my father had, he was in a poor family, and one day he was homeless, and he had a problem in his knee. He couldn't move his leg anymore. He couldn't work anymore. He was in Pakistan
Wow.
back then, and my mother and my father were childless for 12 years after marriage. They have been trying to have a baby, but they couldn't have a baby for 12 years. And one day, my mom is pregnant of my brother, and my father is unable to work on his bed. He's laying down every day, and he can't move. He has this problem, and his leg is blocked.
Oh
But once
man.
my brother is born, somehow he finds the strength to move the leg, and all his life he had a problem with his leg. So he started, how to say, very lame way to move, and he walked all the way to Iran, and he walked then to Syria, then to Turkey, then to Greece, then to Italy, because he said, I have been waiting for a child for 12 years. Now that God gave me a child, I'm giving my child the best opportunities.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible. So him and your mom like walked.
My
Oh, your
father
father
came to
walked.
Europe, yeah, in the 80s, and then in the 94, my family shifted to Italy. So because usually also in other immigrant families, it's always the father going first, and then they prepare the paperwork, and then the other family
Right.
can, yeah,
But he knew he was gonna have a child and he wanted to set that
yeah,
foundation.
yeah.
Wow. That is
It's
incredible
mm,
resilience.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's a really how to say, I have to say, most inspiring man in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did your mom shape your values?
My mom, okay, my mom actually, I also grow a lot with my mom because my family, my grandfather was not doing very well. So when we were living in Italy, we used to go to Pakistan very often to help with my grandfather and my grandmother. So I used to spend a lot of time with my mom without my father.
Hmm.
So I would say that my mom told me most of the values that are, how to say, the religious values that I also accepted as my own values, like
Hmm.
how to say, the patience. Patience is very important for
Hmm.
us, for Muslim people, but also for me especially. So like when you're building something, when you're doing something, you need to work hard, but you need to have patience. So patience is 50% of the job. Otherwise, you are not, yeah. And she told me also, how to study hard, how to also respect my father. So at the beginning, when my father he was a very serious man, he was used
Hmm.
to, very how to say, my father always wanted me to be the top, not never number two,
Right.
so at the beginning it can be frustrating, but my mom told me to respect him, to look at him as a model. She told me actually all the stories that I'm telling you now.
Mm.
Yeah, because when I was growing, she shaped all these values. Actually, this image of my father that I have now, it's actually given to me by my mom.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that sounds like an important uh, balancing factor, the
Yeah,
kind of patience and I guess, uh, having kind of a holistic view of life that includes spirituality and the values
yeah,
that come with that, um, balanced by kind of passion for striving and
yeah.
mastery and being the best. Because if you just have um, one or the other, it's hard to get a lot done.
I believe so. I believe passion is the key. Otherwise, it's easy to give up. It's easy to, you don't have walk towards something. You are just walking. Yeah.
Right. So before we start talking about the next things coming up, machine learning, AI, and content creation, we have to ask, did you have any interest in China before picking up from Italy and moving here? And how did you decide to make that move?
All right. So, to be honest, I was always passionate about the things that I do not know much about. And China was one of them. For example, in Italy, there are many Chinese people, Chinese Chinese immigrants. I believe now they are more than 100,000 or 100 to 200,000, maybe more. So actually, not a small community, I would say. But it's very difficult to find Chinese people working in Italian factories. For example, it's very difficult to find them working with other kind of non-Chinese owned businesses. And also in schools, for example, I always saw Chinese people, they have kind of their own schools. So it's not easy to interact with them. So for me, Chinese people were always a mystery. I don't know much about them, especially also on the web. If you want to learn about Japan, it's full of Japanese website, it's full of Japanese anime, etc. So more or less, they also use our own social networks. But China, they have their own websites, they use their own social networks. And one thing that I was always fascinated about is on Chinese websites, the URL, when the page is maybe Xinwen, they will not call it Xinwen in the URL. They will call it XW, right? So you have these pages that are XWZY. I said, what does it mean? How does it connect with the Chinese characters? How can they understand what this page is meaning? And I was always fascinated about these things. And I got the opportunity to come to China in 2019 because I was working for a company in the automation sector. And they used to work on very big projects on the autonomous guided vehicles, AGVs for the factory floors, automated warehouses, shuttle systems, stuff like this. And I was actually hired to go around the customer sites, and I wanted to specifically to go to somewhere I wanted to know more, which is China. So actually at the beginning they sent me to Europe, and I said, okay, Europe is nice, but I would like to move a little bit far. So that's how I came to China. And since then it's been a fascinating journey, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And I think it will intertwine with some of the other stories that we're going to talk about next. But we're so curious to hear about your journey in machine learning and AI too.
Yeah, because I first saw Dan sent me your YouTube channel, and then I also looked at your background, which is really fantastic. And my first question might be so the origin after the origin story of your background, but what's the origin story of you getting into the machine learning and AI field when you learn about computer and also learn about software engineering? Yeah, could you talk about why are you passionate about it? Yeah.
All right, let me start a little bit from before. So I started my software engineering career very young, actually. I started at age 16 when I was working in Milan as a software engineer. I started very young because of my family financial issues. In 2008, my father lost his job, and I was the only income for my family for a while. But the initial lottery actually played out also later in life. So I got my first job very easily at age 16, as soon as my father lost his job.
It's good investment decision by your father.
Paid off. Yeah, I consider myself a very lucky man. So so I started working, and that time I was in high school. So I was doing high school, and in the afternoon I was also working. And I was working in the web and mobile development. Initially, I started as an employee, but eventually the job was very suited for me because I could have enough time to study. So it was a part-time job. I had enough time to study and also to have a career. So eventually I became partner in the company. So I had a percentage for every project that the company acquired. So it was a stable income and a stable job with a nice income. So eventually I started, after that experience, I started my own firm in developing mobile applications. And later, after this entrepreneurial adventure, I decided to join the other company for traveling abroad to do automation. And this is how I came to China. Now, at that time, I was already interested in machine learning, actually, because a lot of our customers wanted to build visual inspections for their products. That's how I came to get more closer to machine learning. Actually, as a matter of fact, in 2019, my company sent me all the way to San Francisco to do some course about machine learning and computer vision. So I actually went there to learn a little bit, but I was not applying it as much. Things changed in 2020 when I was here in China, and I met my wife. So my wife is a machine learning engineer. That time she was working in Alibaba, and she was living in Hangzhou. I was working in close to Jiaxing. And because Jiaxing is very close to Hangzhou, let's say it's 20 minutes of train, I used to go there every weekend. Also because it's a bigger city, there is more international places, more expats, etc. So that's how I met and came to know my wife. And seeing what she was doing, the kind of applications she was doing, the kind of things she was studying, I could see the passion in her eyes, and I could see myself very passionate about talking about this thing continuously with her. That's when I decided, okay, I need to know this. I need to master this. So what do I do? The first thing is, of course, I start researching more online. I start researching what are the paths to become more specialized in this field. And one of the best paths, if you are an outsider, is to get a master degree. So if you want to enter this field, like from a research point of view, which is what I wanted, you should get a master degree. And if you want, you can also do a PhD. It's not necessary to break through this field, but it gives you some kind of path to follow, so you don't get lost on the way. That's why I decided to do a master degree in this field, and that's how I started all my machine learning journey.
Oh, that sounds cool. So yeah, like I think machine learning and AI back then when I was in college as well, like I studied it really hard for it. Like, do you have any study habits that go into like break into this field? Since also video that you have a really detailed kind of tutorial for every kind of models. So can you share on that?
Yeah. Okay. The first thing is you need to learn the basics. So you need to be willing. It depends on, first of all, actually, what kind of level of knowledge you want to reach. Because there are many different paths depending on the objective. So if you want to just apply AI technologies, then that's one path. If you want to learn how AI technologies work, that's another path. So in my case, I want to learn how things work under the hood. So in my case, I first actually rehearsed all the mathematics that you need to understand the papers. So I recommend redoing a little bit of calculus and linear algebra, because it's all about matrices and vector spaces. So you need all this background, And to be honest, we are quite lucky because we live in a world now in which you can acquire these knowledges very easily now. There is a Coursera, there is YouTube. You don't understand the topic, there are like 1,000 videos on the same topic. So for me to recover all the knowledge that I needed for this was not so hard, to be honest. There are actually some books giving you, for example, there is a very famous book, Mathematics for Machine Learning, that gives you enough background to understand the research level machine learning. And however, the difficult part comes when you want to learn something more recent. So machine learning is a field that evolves very fast. Like the models, last year, we had a stable diffusion, but if we consider now, we already have a stable diffusion plus a lot of other things, So they already went much beyond that, which means that if you want to keep up with the latest technology, there is no clear path. So there is no like a book if you want to learn about the transformer, or if you want to learn about GPT, or you want to learn about the llama, etc. The only way is to read papers, as many as you can. The second thing, and this actually is true for all software engineers, not only for machine learning engineers, is what I call the ABC rule. So if you are a software engineer, the rule is ABC, which is always be coding. So you always should be coding something, be it for your own self, be it for some industry application, be it for your employer, but you should always be coding. For example, I am now preparing a video on retrieval augmented generation, which is a way to augment the knowledge of a large language model by external sources. So the large language model can use, for example, now Twitter has a new model, right? Grok.
Yeah.
And this model Grok can access all the information from the tweets as well. How can it do that? Because there are two ways usually to augment the knowledge of a large language model. First is fine tuning. So you train again the model on some specific data. The second is retrieval augmented generation, in which you use some external source. So anyway, to make this video, because I like to go in depth in each topic, I read some algorithms on how the vector databases work. But I read the algorithm, I read the paper, I drew the algorithm by hand. It all made sense in my mind. But when I was trying to explain it to somebody, I said, I don't quite understand it. So how to improve my knowledge? I coded the algorithm. That's how, because when you code it and then you run the code, you will see that you will have some bugs. Maybe you think things should work in this way, but actually they work in that way. Maybe you think that you should use that data structure, but actually you should use that one. Maybe you think that the runtime is like linear, but actually it's exponential, etc., etc. So coding is the best way to learn. And this applies, this is actually something I got from mathematical proofs. So for example, if you want to study some mathematical proofs, when you read the proof on the book, it will make sense to you. But if you then try to teach it to someone, you will realize that you are not able to do it. So the best way is to write down the proof copy the proof on a piece of paper. And while your hand is moving, your brain is making connections. So your brain is thinking, why am I writing this number? Why am I writing this letter? And that's how you actually learn to interiorize the knowledge of the proof. And the same happens
So even if the answer is right in front of you, just the process of getting your fingers to type it out or hands to write it out is a really critical part of the learning experience for you.
For example, I made my video about Stable Diffusion. So the video about Stable Diffusion took me months to prepare because first of all, I needed to acquire all the background knowledge for it. Then I needed to study a lot of papers. Like I read between 20 and 30 papers, plus I read them more than once. But the mathematical proofs, so to understand all the mathematics behind it, there is a very famous paper, which is called the Unified Approach to Stable Diffusion. I will share it with you later.
Yep.
And it's made by a person who works at Google as well. Anyway, in this paper, he describes all the proofs for Stable Diffusion and for diffusion models. Now, if you read the paper, the proofs are written very correctly, very perfectly. And they do each step one by one. Now, I read the paper 2-3 times. Everything makes sense. But after a while, when I want to make the video, I said, not so clear to me. So what I did is I write all the proofs by hand, one by one, on a piece of paper while reading the paper again. This way, I could interiorize them. I think this is also something people do when they study mathematical proofs. This is really important. So to write the proof by yourself. And the same happens with there must be some neurological process that works better when you write down things, because I think your brain thinks about everything you're writing down.
Right.
And each line you are making, your brain thinks about it. And that's how you actually improve your knowledge.
Yeah. But do you also find like any common or fundamental similarities between like maybe you learn a Mandarin or another a natural language or like a really hard concept? Like do you find it have a similarity in it?
Okay. I am very grateful actually to China in general. One thing I am very grateful for is that China and learning Chinese taught me about consistency. So about being consistent about something. So Mandarin is one of those languages that you cannot master in 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year. It takes 10 years at least, if you want to really master a language. Of course, depends also on how much time you put. But it's also true that you cannot study the same thing for 8 hours a day. Your brain will burn out.
Mm.
So the only way to learn Mandarin is to put 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night, usually, or half hour in the morning, half hour at night, because your brain needs time to interiorize the knowledge. And Mandarin taught me how to be consistent in this learning process and to accept that it's slow. So you need to accept it. You can't cheat on it. You can't study for 8 hours. It will not give you any advantage. So once you accept it, then you can master Mandarin, and you accept the fact that it will take years. The same process happens with machine learning. You need to understand that it's slow and it will take years. Depend, of course, on your time. And thankfully, I was studying Mandarin that time. So I realized this through Mandarin, and I accepted it for Mandarin. So slowly, I also accepted this for machine learning. So the best way is to learn new concepts, not so much every day, so not so many every day, but practice them a lot. So practice your existing knowledge a lot every day. That is for sure important. So if you learn about the transformer, wonderful. Try to code your own transformer. It will take 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, whatever, you do it. Try to code other transformer models. And every model you will code, you will learn some bit more about the transformer. So I actually didn't code it once. I coded it many times on different projects. And every project gives me a new perspective into what is happening under the hood. And the same applies to every aspect, I think, of the learning knowledge, like of the learning path of any kind of field. It's like also medicine, you learn about the heart, you learn about, I don't know, some other kind of operation, but you need to do many operations in order to fully master that kind of expertise.
Yeah. So you brought up kind of an interesting milestone, like how many transformers did you write before, if you had to throw out a number, before you felt comfortable in your understanding enough to make the video?
Okay, my journey on the transformer started by studying it. So first of all, it was not easy to find resources to study it, the transformer. I learned about the transformer during my university time. And then I started Googling some videos. The problem is every video is giving you some piece of information. And to be able to code the transformer, unfortunately, you need to either have a full understanding of the transformer, or there is another way, which is just code it. So I was learning about the transformer, but I could not connect all the pieces together. So after a while, I said, okay, I have 2 ways now. Either I try to find more resources that will connect everything together, and then I can code the transformer, or I just take a pause, find whatever resources there is online on coding the transformer, and start coding it by myself, even if I don't fully understand what is happening. I realized that this approach worked better for me. So halfway of my learning journey, I coded it just by copying someone's code. The process of copying the code from someone else actually made me realize that something that I had taken for granted now worked in this way. And something that I could not connect by watching videos now were connected because I watched the code and because I wrote the code. So the best way to approach the problem is just learn like a monkey sometimes, but integrate it with knowledge. So it's not one way or the other. And then they will help each other. The code will help the understanding, and the understanding will help the code. So how many I coded? I think I coded at least 3 or 4 times before making my video on the transformer.
Okay, cool. I mean because I had no idea, is it, you have to code 150?
No. I think depends on how much knowledge you acquire by self-studying. So I studied actually a lot of papers, a lot of resources, a lot of articles. So the single pieces made sense to me, but then connecting them together, you need to start coding. Even if you're not proficient, if you're not a master, start coding. What's the worst can happen? It will throw an exception. It will not run. You start coding, and after a while, you will realize that actually it's easier than you think.
Yeah. That is cool. And great tips for
And the
learning.
same,
Yeah.
and the same happened for Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion, it's not easy to find actually even which code to copy, because some codes are complex. They have a lot of stuff inside that maybe you don't need to understand, or you don't want to understand because it's really too much, you know. I just wanted to understand actually in painting, I wanted to understand text to image, I wanted to understand image to image. So I don't know if your viewers are familiar with Stable Diffusion, but I think they are. So Stable Diffusion is a model for transforming a prompt into an image. And I couldn't find all these resources. So the first step I did was to read all the papers. But of course, the papers give you a knowledge that is in your mind, it makes sense, etc. But actually, if you ask someone who have the knowledge and then you ask him to code, he will not be able to code it. So what I did is also, again, the monkey technique, which is, okay, let's go to the repository, official repository of Stable Diffusion. I start coding. I just copy the code. It took me 1 or 2 weeks to copy the code like this. Then I start removing parts. Then I integrate from another repository some parts that I am interested in. Then I start modifying it by myself. Then after you do it this, you will realize that everything start making sense. And that's how I could actually make my own. So machine learning, as I said, it's something you have to accept that it will take time, depending on the kind of depth of the knowledge you want to reach. If you want to be very in depth, or you want to more shallow, or etc. So if you want to really in depth, it will take time, and you have to accept it.
Cool. But thank you for the tips. And how do you like decided to make videos, make those tutorial videos on YouTube, and also start this channel?
Okay. Okay, so actually at the beginning, I was teaching my wife all this stuff. Because one way to practice your own knowledge is to try to explain it to someone else. So every time I studied for my university, at night, I sat with my wife and I tried to teach her what I learned about my exam.
So she's a machine learning engineer, but not working on generative models.
Yeah, she's working on generative models. She's actually
now she is.
Yeah, she's working in she's working on a team doing a talking avatar. Like they take a video of you and then they can change your lips to say whatever you want. Also synchronized with the audio. Yeah. And she's working.
You guys could spend a lot of time at home just talking about generative AI.
Yeah.
That's very nice. You know, also my brother now is interested in this field, so actually it's a big family. Yeah. Now, so with my wife, we were. I was actually practicing my own knowledge for my exams. And not only for exams, also for other stuff that I was learning. So to understand that if I actually understood. And after a while, my wife realized that my explaining style was not bad. And it actually was very good. So she encouraged me to make videos online and publish them online. So I started by doing some paper reviews of papers that I liked. So my channel is also only about actually things I like. It's not things that people want. It's people I like. And hopefully people will also like it. So I started doing the papers that I found more interesting. Then I started doing published my video about the transformer. The first version of the video, which is now not online anymore, was with a very bad audio. Like I didn't invest in a microphone like I have now. So I recorded the audio with my phone. I published the video online. It was around 1 hour. And I didn't expect anything, you know, it was just, let's say if people watch it. I started receiving tens, hundreds of comments of people. Your video is amazing. I learned so much from you. Best video on the internet. And they said, even at the beginning, I was quite frustrated by the audio quality, but I didn't give up. And thankfully, thank God I didn't give up because your video is amazing. So I realized that I may be much better than what I thought I was. So I invested in a microphone. I said, well, this video deserves better audio quality because it's really helping a lot of people. So I re-recorded the video, also fixing some little problems in the previous video. And still the video is very popular. And it's one of my most popular videos. And since then, I have a lot of fans telling me what kind of things they want to see more. So I try to combine what other people want with what I actually want. So it's my channel, like my learning journey, in which I also combine some other people's requests and hopefully help other people join this field of machine learning, which can be very hard, especially because it's not easy to find resources. A lot of people are actually scared by papers. They see a paper, they say, "Oh my God, I can't understand it." Yeah, and actually, the difficult part is not giving up. I remember there was a study they have done on kids, and they realized that in the mathematical competitions, the kids that perform the best are not the more well-educated or the with higher IQ or anything like that, but are the ones who don't give up on the problem and don't surrender. So are the ones that who spend more time thinking about the problem, and eventually they realize they can do it, even if it's very hard. The same applies to papers. Sometimes I read the same paper 2 or 3 times. So for example, the first time I will highlight in red the parts I don't understand, in yellow the parts that are important, and in green the parts that are fundamental. So then I have my own rules for this. For example, the green part should not be exceeded the 10% of the paper, which means that the fundamental part of the paper is 10%, not more.
Right.
And the red part can be anything, but usually I only highlight the part that I would like to know more. Then next time I read the paper, after acquiring the background knowledge, I wanted the red part to reduce. And eventually the goal is to eliminate the red part if I'm really interested in that paper. This is how I approach the paper reading.
But when you go back, the red part is still there. So it's also a sign of progress if you actually understand it now.
Yeah. You need to trick your mind into believing that you're progressing. That's why we use to-do list. We use a to-do list. So every morning you wake up, you make a to-do list, and using it or not using it, actually, even if you do the same kind of activities, but when you use a to-do list, you feel much better, because when you tick,
intermediate
say, oh
goals.
Yes, that's rewarding.
Yeah.
And
nice.
Go ahead.
So the channel is actually growing very fast, and I'm recently very happy because I signed my first contract with a Silicon Valley company to do a sponsorship, and in my next video there will be a path that is sponsored by a company, and actually it was unexpected success, but after a while it was a planned success. So every amazing thing starts with a lottery of some kind, something that is unexpected. You didn't expect it and it happened, right? But eventually you realize that, okay, if I keep working on this path, it eventually will move to that direction. It will grow. So after a while, it became a planned success. So I started working in a certain way, doing certain kind of videos, doing certain kind of content, of course, content that I like, in order to make my channel grow. And it's actually paying off very well.
That reminds me of a concept from the management theorist Jim Collins. He calls return on luck is very important, right? Everyone gets a little bit of luck sometime now and then. We'll win a lottery of some kind, big or small. And a lot of difference between the outcome is what they do after that. Right? Like, what is the return that they get on their luck? Is it just that moment of happiness and feeling of success, or do they use that to build towards whatever their broader, longer term goals are?
Yeah, actually, okay. Usually, I am also the kind of person that luck is somehow guided by you unconsciously. What do I mean by this? Actually, this is not my first venture, when I was in middle school, I started a website with one of my friends. We were making, that time MSN Messenger was very popular. So we used to make some software for MSN, like how to send infinite message to people, how to send infinite nudge to people, this kind of software that annoy people, but people like them. So we made a website out of it, and we actually grew. We were one of the most popular websites in Italy for this kind of stuff, but we were not smart enough to monetize it. So eventually that died out when we went to high school. And this friend of mine, actually now he's a very successful YouTuber. Because he also learned that if you build something, people will like it and you can grow. And he kept this philosophy all his life. He has now more than 100 or 200,000 subscribers in Italy, which is quite a big market. Considering that he's not speaking in English, he's speaking only in Italian, which is a niche market. So it's more competitive, right? Because the population is smaller. I mean, So he's very good. He kept this philosophy all his life. And I also actually ventured many times. So, for example, I founded 2 startups. They didn't work quite well, okay, but I learned a lot of lessons. And I also I learned about my own insecurities, my own difficulties, my own, weaknesses, and I worked on them all the way. So actually, even, this can look like you put a video online and it will suddenly, voila, it will suddenly become very famous. But actually, it's not like this. When I made the video, I knew that I had to put that quantity of effort if I wanted to reach that kind of success. It's not like I just one day I wake up and say, okay, let's make it. No, I actually planned. I worked hard on it because I wanted it to be successful. So it's always at the beginning, the luck, I think it's planned luck unconsciously. Right. It's based on your previous experiences. It's based on your previous knowledge. And then you, of course, work on it in a particular way.
Cool. And what's the process though? Like, what's the process when you making this video? Like, how do you decide on the topics and like based on also like how, in the perspective how to grow this channel? Yeah. Okay. Can you share on that a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, the kind of content I focus on is very long videos, but in-depth videos. So I don't like to, for example, tell you how to use Hugging Face library to build this or that. There are many YouTube channels doing that. I actually not focus on that particular content. My focus are researchers, professors, and engineers. Actually, my slides, just yesterday, I was contacted by a professor at the University of Leeds in Belgium. They are using my slides for teaching. He said, can I use your slides for my, yeah, don't worry. So these are my focus. And so to make this kind of videos, you need a lot of research, like a lot of research. So to make one video, if you consider the timing between my videos, nearly 1 month. So I need to study the topic for 2 weeks at least, then 1 week to write the slides, because I always use slides. And then, let's say, not 1 week, but a few days to record it, cut it, etc. So how do I select the topics? Usually I try to keep a path. So for now, I have 2 paths. One is NLP, one is generative models. So I try to concentrate on things that I like. So generative models, I actually do it because I like them. And I also try to keep up with the latest trends, which is NLP, so large language models. For example, my next video is about retrieval augmented generation, which is combining the knowledge that my viewers have acquired from studying Llama, from studying the transformer, from studying BERT from me. Now we can move it further. So I try to create kind of a step-by-step approach. So I can always tell people, okay, if you're watching this video, these are the prerequisites. The prerequisite, you are familiar with the transformer, you're familiar with the language models like Llama. So if you're not familiar, go watch my previous video on that topic. This is kind of how I choose the path. On the other side, I also try to keep up some space for my own personal learning, for my own personal interest. So for example, in the future, I may want to do some paper reviews on papers I really find fascinating, things that are novel, things that are extraordinary that I find. And so you need to balance things that you like with things that are important for people to learn. If you do only things that are important to learn because they are fancy or because they will give you more users, then I think eventually you will fail because it takes a long time to prepare. You need passion. You cannot just pretend you have passion. You will feel a lot of obstacles because there are no books on these topics. There are no university courses easily available on these topics, the latest topics. So you need to struggle a lot. And to struggle, you need passion. Otherwise, you will give up.
Right.
Yeah.
How much time of that month are you spending on preparing the video versus other things like classes? As you're coming up to graduation, there's job hunting and networking and all that.
Well, I would say now that my classes are over, I'm concentrating full time on preparing for my videos and preparing for interviews. Now, actually, I'm in a little unclear part of my career in which I can choose to do this full time, or I can choose to go to the industry. I like this position, actually. I like the uncertainty of this position because it gives me the possibility to choose and to concentrate fully on one or the other. But let's say that for now, I concentrate on my videos, but I'm always open for the right opportunity. I keep my door open for the right opportunity. So I actually study for interviews, but actually studying for interviews is also studying for videos. So actually the knowledge I acquire from videos is actually useful for interviews. So
True.
I would say I concentrate 75% on my channel and 25% on other knowledge that I need for my career.
Right.
Yeah. And actually there was a time when I decided to take a career break for machine learning and deep learning. There was a time in which I was working, I was studying, and I was also studying for my personal machine learning journey. And and also was wanted to study Chinese. I always had this, So I realized I needed a break. I wanted to take a leap of faith and say, okay, I want to take a break and I want to fully dedicate myself to machine learning, no matter the outcome of this choice. So that time I started a crazy path of waking up at 4 in the morning to study Chinese in the morning, study Chinese in the night, study machine learning, study for university, and study like crazy all this stuff. Because you also need some time in between each activity to kind of rest or to refresh your mind. So the useful time, actually, in total time, it's actually 8 to 9 hours in this period, maybe 10. Because task switching is not easy, and there are other stuff you need to also. And I would say now it's 75% the time, but now it's I don't need to do that anymore. That was at the beginning when I was really, I wanted to enter. Now I already have the background knowledge on machine learning, so now it's much easier for me to understand. I don't need to do that harsh routine.
What do those breaks look like during that task switching? Because it is a big shift going from studying Chinese to machine learning.
Yeah, okay. Usually I like coding stuff that I find useful for myself that may not be useful for others. So for example, in the past month, I have been, during all of my breaks, I work on this mini project of creating my own tool for learning Chinese. And it's only for myself. I decided that I will not even publish it if I don't want. So it's not like I make it for success, or I just wanted to make something useful for myself. And coding, actually, if you like it, it's quite relaxing, especially if you do it without any, purpose, without any future outcome that you hope to get. So without.
And if you have Copilot to help you.
I use it. So actually, I've been working on this little project on the side, which is really zero effort, and I expect zero from this project. But eventually, if it turns out to be a good project that other people use, then wonderful. So basically, I realized that by learning Chinese, for example, I wanted a dictionary that I could use over the words to tell me what's the meaning of the word. But at the same time, I wanted it to track all the words that I know, so that if I go above a character and that character is also contained in one of the words that I know, it will show me which words I already know that contains that character. This way, my brain will make a connection between these two words. So I will know that that particular hua is the same hua that is also appearing in another word.
Oh.
Yeah, because I don't learn to write the character, so I don't make this connection, which people, maybe Chinese children, they make in school. But if you don't learn to write them, then for you, it's just only about making connections between words.
So forthcoming Chrome extension.
Yeah. I will, of course, I will release it open source, and let's see if people will like, they can use it. If they don't, that's not a problem. But for me, it will be very useful. This is tailor-made for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can. I mean, that way you can decrease the complexity of Chinese characters.
Yes. I think everyone has a different learning way, and nowadays we have the possibility of making our own tools, and if you can do it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, we've covered so much in this interview. It's really been a joy. As we start to wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share, highlight, or any key takeaways for our listeners before we go?
Well, there is one little story I would like to tell you. Another lottery I won in my life that was an unexpected lottery. So this is also about lotteries, you know. So when I started dating my wife, she's Chinese and she's from Shaanxi, and her parents are quite, traditional people, like traditional Chinese people. So they wanted her daughter to find a Chinese man, and also my mom, of course, she wanted me to find a Pakistani woman, etc. So it was very difficult to connect the two cultures, you know. And at the beginning, their parents were very, very worried when she told them that she was dating a foreigner. Because in their mind, the foreigner was someone who comes to China. Maybe he will leave China and leave you one day, and he will forget about China and cannot be trusted. Now, what is the best way to connect to cultures is to connect them not through the mobile phone, not through the newspapers, but to meeting them and showing them who I actually am. So when I went to meet her parents saw me, and her mom said, 他就是新疆人. He's just like a man from Xinjiang. And
Really?
that's when I realized I also won the DNA lottery. Because Pakistani people and Xinjiang very close to each other, at least from ethnically point of view, at least from the Pakistani northern Pakistani people.
Right.
So actually, the how to say, all the insecurities, all the doubts were won in 5 minutes after meeting me. And that's, and, I never thought I won the DNA lottery until this. I said, wow, so good to be Pakistani, so good to be, it's credible.
Yeah,
Wow.
nice.
Yeah. And I guess, we have to be grateful for human migrations and history.
Yeah. This is to say actually that there is a lot of qualities that you have that you never thought they are qualities, but actually they turn out to be very useful in life.
Right. You never know.
Incredible. And lotteries and what you do after you win them has been a big theme. Umar, how should folks follow you, hear about what you're up to?
Okay, for sure, I would recommend watching my videos. So go to my YouTube channel, my website, umarjamil.org, so org. And here on my website, I will post most of the latest updates on what I'm doing, where I am, and all of the activities surrounding me. And if you are interested in learning machine learning, my channel is recommended for you, but only after you have a certain background knowledge. So don't be scared if you watch my channel and you don't understand the things, because my audience is a little, advanced level, like researchers or PhDs or professors or engineers who are already proficient in things. If you want to learn about machine learning, there is plenty of resources. It's based on what kind of level you want to reach. So I would suggest that you may want to start with some simple courses on Coursera on how AI works, not how it works under the hood. Then if you want to learn how the models work under the hood, then you can come to my channel. So don't be scared if you don't understand, because you are on the right path, but you just need some background knowledge.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, our guest today has been Umar Jamil. Umar, thanks so much for being part of the craft.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Craft Podcast. For more links and information about this episode and other episodes, you can search for the Craft Podcast by Daniel Tedesco and Michael Du anywhere you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, of course. Also, of course, look for Umar's channel, which I think is HK Proj. Is that the handle?
Well, the username is very but you just go to umarjamil.org. I think it's easier, because that username I've been using since I was in elementary school.
Great. All right, we'll include the links in the show notes. So thanks, everybody, and see you next time. Until then, keep crafting. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.